back if we lose her.
Okay, we're all set.
All right.
Does any other board members online? Karina?
Nicole is logging in now. And Sandra's already.
Yeah, so. Person listens, Kenny. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call into order the Montgomery County Planning Commission's monthly board meeting for December 10th, 2025. Let the record show that the Planning Commission currently has a quorum of 8 members, 6 in the conference room and 2 online. The only member currently absent is Kim, and we expect her to either log in or be absent. So just keep an eye on that for the record. With that, before we get started on our agenda and any approval of minutes, is there any board comments from those board members in the room?
I hope everyone joins me in saying what a nice visit it was to the zoo last meeting. Every time we come, there's something new and exciting, and it was fun to be there at Christmas and see all the lights. So once again, let's commend them and thank them for hosting us.
The director is really superb.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of energy and a good story, and I can see why they can raise lots of money for that zoo.
Great. Yeah. Any other board comments? Sandra, Cole, anything?
No comment.
And we'll move on with the approval of our minutes. Is there a motion to approve the Montgomery County Planning Commission's regular monthly board meeting minutes for doesn't have a date on here. What was the date of that meeting? 19th.
That's funny. It is 18.
For November 18th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are any comments or corrections on the meeting minutes?
It's wonderful. We never have corrections in. I don't know who's writing them up. Thank you, Karina, and who's editing them. If anybody does, thank you.
With that, all those in favor to approve the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is our public comment. Is there any public comment is there any public comment from anybody in the room, public or staff comment before we get started? Any public or staff comment for people online? Anybody, Karina?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to our first formal agenda, which is the community planning assistance contracts. And we have 3 in front of us, and call on Eric to go through them with us. How you doing, Eric?
Good morning, good morning. I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
All right. So we have 3 planning assistance contracts for your consideration today for Douglas, West Norton, and Cheltenham townships. You have the presentation summary, and then I'll let the chair go over the actual resolution and the numbers at the end. Douglas Township is the first one. We're updating their revitalization plan, starting in the new contract. Focusing on walkability. They have some new supervisors who really want to try and make Philadelphia Ave much more walkable and pedestrian friendly. We'll provide some grant writing and support for that plan once it's completed, and then we'll work on their subdivision land development ordinance as an update. Naomi Krim is the planner for Douglas Township. For West Norton Township, again, we're updating their zoning ordinance and zoning map. They'd adopted a comprehensive plan update earlier this year. And so they're implementing that through the zoning changes. We also participate in monthly staff meetings there to go over land developments and planning and zoning policy with them. And then we're also going to move into a subdivision and land development update with them following the zoning. Naomi Krim is also the planner for West Norton Township. Lastly, Cheltenham, we're wrapping up their comprehensive plan. That should be adopted hopefully the first part of 2026. And then we'll be moving into an update of their open space plan, assisting with ongoing zoning and SALDO updates as part of their comp plan implementation. And then they have an active transportation committee, and we'll be helping them with their active transportation initiatives and supporting some of their planning efforts. And that's Chloe Moore and Adam Schatz kind of team up on the Cheltenham Township contract. Again, the numbers are there for each of those. Any questions?
Your resolution.
Okay. Yeah.
So So before us is MCPC Resolution 25-12.1, Community Planning Assistance Contract Resolution of December 10th, 2025. Contains three contracts. The first one is contract 697, Douglas Township. Length of the contract is January 1st, 2026 to 12/31/2028. Total cost is $86,070. That is split 50-50 between the municipality and county. The next one is contract 699, Hartman Township. It is the same length of time as the first one. The total cost on this is $137,136. Again, split 50-50 between the municipality and the county. The third contract is number 703 West Norristown Township. Same length of contract. Total cost is $120,498. Again, split 50-50 between the municipality and county. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? So moved. Been moved. Is there a second? Any comments or questions for Eric on these three contracts?
Eric, in the time that I've been here, I've never seen $137,000 contract. Is it just the economy, or is just the amount of work you're going to be doing with the open space, zoning and subdivision, et cetera, et cetera?
We've probably had a couple that have been larger than that in the past, but it is up there. It's a 3 planner day contract. They also have 24 night meetings a year, so we go to 2 meetings a month there. So the combination of those two things kind of push it up. Then of course our new rates have pushed everything up a little bit. But it's not out of the ordinary. 3 planner days is fairly standard. The 24 night meetings add to it a little bit. But we've definitely had contracts probably over 150 and 160 in the past. But this is definitely a top 5.
Up to the work.
I can verify that Chloe is on those meetings twice a month.
Yes.
And not shy about talking.
And I think they're back to back, aren't they? Or have been?
Good for you.
Any other comments or questions for Eric? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any-
And then just as a preview too, we have Collegeville is signed, and we did just get that earlier this week. We expect Hatboro, North Wales, and Salford to be signed by the end of the year, so hopefully those will be on our January agenda for approval.
Which ones were those?
Collegeville,
Collegeville?
Abington, Hatboro, North Wales, and South.
Do you have any new ones coming in?
So we added White Marsh and Upper Frederick earlier this year. We're in conversations right now with Plymouth Township. So we're hoping they have a lot of planning issues going on between the mall and their office park and their industrial area along Conshohocken Road. So we're excited to hopefully start working with them in 2026.
Good job, Chloe.
Thanks, Eric. Yep. Okay, next up is our Norristown Trail Connections and Enhancement Project. And I call on Bill and Ellen to get us going through the Trail Junction Center, Lafayette Street Trail, Gateway Master Plan, and Falls Avenue and Chain Street Trailhead improvements. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you guys doing? Great.
How are you doing?
Good.
All right.
You're bumping Bill? Sideline?
We're gonna tag team.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Looking forward to hearing about these.
Yeah, good. Okay, okay, great. Thank you, Rob. All right. So I'm Ellen Miramontes, Trails and Open Space Planner here at the Planning Commission. Good morning, board members, colleagues, any members of the public. I'm not sure if we have any. So I'm going to provide just a bit of a brief introduction to these 3 projects that you'll hear about from Bill and I this morning. Just a little bit of context geographically, project history, just so you have that behind you as you then hear about each individual project. So we're going to talk about the Trail Junction Center, the Lafayette Street Trail Gateway, and then improvements at the Haas and Chain trailheads. See, these projects are all distinct projects and they're moving along on separate timelines. But they're connected, obviously, and they will work in concert with one another to provide better connections to the existing trails here in Norristown. You can see the yellow line showing the Schuylkill River Trail. You'll hear us refer to it a lot as the SRT, and then also the orange dotted line, the Chester Valley Trail, the CVT. And so of course, they're connected by those trails, and you can see where we are in relation. So then to give you the geographic context, here at a regional level, you can see the red star denoting where these trails are happening. So really one of the most important intersections within the Circuit Trail Network, the CVT and the SRT. You've probably heard the network right now is over 400 miles, is envisioned to be more than 800 miles. And then our network, approximately 100 miles, sits within and connected to that larger regional trails network. And you see the red star there. And then to give you a little bit of project history. So some of you were here when this study came out, but some of you might not have heard of it. The Montgomery County Trail Access Diversity and Awareness Study. It was completed in 2020. It was led by our colleague Donna Fabry, and it was looking at how people access our trails. How do they know about them? Are the users diverse? And there were 3 study areas: Pottstown, Pennypack, and then also Pennypack Trail area, and then also Norristown. So Norristown, being one of those focused study areas, got a closer look. And even a closer look than some of the other 2, it received some conceptual plans in the study. This map down here shows the overall study area. And what we heard during that study process is here in Norristown, a lot of folks were either maybe didn't know about the trail or didn't feel welcome going onto the trails, felt like it was just for those fast, crazy bikers, and it wasn't comfortable for them to go there and walk. And so a couple of these projects grew out of that study effort. So 2 of the projects you'll hear about today, the Haas Chain Trailhead improvements, and then the Lafayette Street Trail Gateway, were envisioned in this project, and now we're implementing them. So we are jumping off from this. And now we're going to jump into the Trail Junction Center. It's been around for a much longer period of time, more than 20 years, dates back to the early 2000s, our predecessors here looking for a way to connect the SRT and the CVT. And now you'll hear about that project from Bill.
Well, I'm great. Good morning. Thank you.
We took a field trip there, didn't we? You did.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I jump into more detail, this is a great slide to show where these 2 trails come together. This is obviously the Trail Junction Center. This is the Chester Valley Trail that comes out of Bridgeport. And it comes along the side of the building and then the Schuylkill River Trail. So that's that nexus of the 2 regional trails that Ellen has been talking about. This project has really gained traction within the last 5 years, even though the county has owned it since 2007. And of the 3 projects that we're going to talk about today, this one is the closest to becoming a reality, which I'll get into those details in just a moment.
CVT comes underneath the bridge, it's right down there.
It does, yeah. It kind of comes up along this wall and then goes like that. Yeah. So just to reiterate what Ellen's already talked about, here's that junction. This is on our primary trail network map. The Chester Valley Trail comes in here and connects in with the Schuylkill River Trail. That starts where the Trail Junction Center is. And then looking at this map, here's the CVT coming up. It wraps around the building and ties into the Schuylkill River Trail right there. Again, another photograph looking, this is from the north. So here's the Chester Valley Trail coming up like this, coming into the Schuylkill River Trail like that. It's also at the intersection of DeKalb and Lafayette Streets in Norristown. So it really is at two junctions, those two streets, as well as the two trails. So it's a really prominent location visually and functionally as well. So a little bit more background, Ellen went into this just a little bit, but we did purchase the building in 2007. We've done a couple of feasibility studies. We've done an environmental assessment, but design, engineering, architecture, and landscape architecture really started in 2022, and it finished up last year. We have received grant funding for this project. We had a $100,000 Regional Trail Program grant from the William Penn Foundation that paid for design. And we've also received a $500,000 statewide local share account grant that will go toward construction. The current status is that we broke ground for this project back in October. The contractors are going to mobilize later this month or early next year. We think it'll take about 15 months to build this project. And the total construction cost is about $5.6 million. Again, $500,000 of which will be funded with the state grant. So in terms of importance and vision, again,
Where does the rest of the money come from?
it's coming from the county capital budget. Again, this is at this nexus of these two really important trails, and we really look at this building as having two faces. There's the face that looks at the trail and invites people from the trail to the building and to the site, but we have an equal emphasis on the face that looks and connects with the community of Norristown. So we want people from both sides of the building to come and to use it. And that's always been the vision when we've talked about how to design this building. So just a few historic photos here. These are, for nothing else, just fun to look at. But this is a picture of the bridge that goes, Ellen, correct me here because you're more familiar with these. This is the bridge that goes over DeKalb, and this is looking up DeKalb that way. Trail Junction Center in this photo would be about right here. This building, this is the Trail Junction Center right there. And this is kind of a before and after of Lafayette Street looking east. And you can see that building, I don't know when it was taken, but you can see where it is today. And the Trail Junction Center is located right over here. And this is a picture of the Trail Junction Center. The important thing to note here is you might be wondering what the function of this building was historically. It was a place for goods and merchandise to come. There were two train tracks on either side of it. Trains would come up, either offload or upload merchandise. If it was being brought to Norristown, it would then be distributed across Norristown, but it would also pick up materials and merchandise that had been produced in Norristown. So it had functions of bringing and receiving goods and merchandise over the years. And you can see one of those train tracks here. So it's got a really interesting history, and it's been around for a long time. It was built in 1937-ish.
34.
34, yeah. So it's been around for almost 100 years. And here it is today. You can see a couple of things in this photograph. This is looking east. Here's Lafayette Street, here's DeKalb. They did do some improvements around the building when the Lafayette Street extension project was done and completed 2 or 3 years ago. Some improvements were made to the site around the building. The building was not touched, but these planting areas were added. These retaining walls and the sitting area was added a few years ago. So these improvements were made, but honestly, they weren't really utilized because the building didn't have any purpose. And the question is like, why would anybody go to the site if they weren't being drawn there by anything? So I would argue that it really hasn't been used except for unsheltered people. And some of you may be aware that there was a pretty large encampment here as of several months ago, and that was dealt with by the county in a humane way where people were coordinated with to make sure that they didn't just get kicked out of the site, but that they were humanely treated and helped. But after that, a fence was put up to protect the site from any further people coming and living there, and that's the current status of it right now. So public outreach was a really important part of this project. It involved a number of events, and it was multi-generational. And it involved a lot of different people with different interests. Ellen really spearheaded a lot of the public outreach for this project, but you can see Ken Lawrence in the upper right photo there. Kids came, we had helmet giveaways, we were handing out surveys to people riding down the trail. It was very interactive and it was pretty popular. We had like a smoothie maker that was on a bike that you had to pedal to mix up the smoothie. A lot of people came, a lot of people were interested in it, and we were trying to do two things. One, find out who the people were and groups around the area who might be interested in this site and for using it in different ways. But we also wanted to get an understanding of what the issues were for people about this site. Was it safety? What did they want? What would they need? What would they desire for what would happen here? And we gathered a lot of data, and that's what drove the design for the building as well as the site. So I'm not going to go to the detail of this data, but we did, as I said, we had a survey and we collected a lot of information. Not surprisingly, the biggest thing that people were looking for, and this is obviously going to come from the trail user community, people wanted bathrooms that were accessible from the outside. The trails have very few public bathrooms that you can use. And so people really said, we need bathrooms that are accessible if we're using the trail. We also learned that if the building were to become functional, that people would want restrooms indoors, but people also had other things that they were interested in. They wanted to learn more about the trail system through signage and information that was posted there. They wanted places to sit and to have respite. And also people, another thing that people brought up is that they were looking for a place for food and drink, not in a restaurant, but a place where you could come by, grab a cup of coffee or a drink, pastry, whatever it might be, a sandwich. And that would include people from the community of Norristown as well as people using the trail. So you can see there are a number of different things on here that people were looking for. And when we received all this information, we worked really hard to integrate it into the design, and our architects did a really good job, and landscape architects did a really good job of doing that. So in terms of overall goals, you can see here that we had 7 what we call like primary goals for this building and this site. And I'm not going to go into all the detail down here or how that would be done and what that would look like, but I would really direct your attention to this top line. We wanted the site and the building to provide trail services. We wanted it to serve as a gateway for people coming into Norristown, coming out of Norristown, coming off the trail. We want it to be a destination. We want it to be a place where people want to come and visit and use. As I said before, we wanted it to have community benefit. We didn't just want this to serve trail users. We wanted it to be a place that was serving the community at large. Flexibility was really important. We didn't want to over-design and over-prescript how this building would be designed because we wanted to maximize its ability to be flexible space to be used in any number of different ways. Some that we've already thought of, but things that we also haven't thought of. So we didn't want to presume that it would be used in certain ways, so we kept it as flexible as possible. We also integrated distinct design principles into this. Sustainability, accessibility was really important. The site right now, the building is not fully accessible, so the design incorporates design elements that make it so. And then, of course, place management and governance. Once this project is completed, how is it going to be governed? Who's going to manage it? And how's it going to be used going into the future? So this is a shot of the interior of the warehouse portion of the building. You can see that it's just a wide open space with roll-up doors. Right now, we have an RFP on the street for what we're calling activation partnerships. What organizations and people can we serve in the community who might want to use this building for different things? Farmers markets, craft shows. Is there a small bakery or restaurant that would like to use it to provide that food and drink that I was talking about earlier? How would different county departments might want to use this building? Parks and Trails, Health and Human Services. We're trying to solicit, we're soliciting proposals from all those different types of groups for how they would like to envision using this building. Once we receive those responses back, we'll assess them, figure out how they might work together, and then we'll put contracts together to make sure that they work in sync with one another and that the building is used to its maximum extent possible. Couple of slides for the design. I'm not going to go into tons of detail on this, but a couple of key things about the interior of the building or the building as a whole. Here's that open warehouse space that's going to remain open. All the doors, roll-up doors are being replaced, all the utilities are being built out. It's gonna be heated and cooled, but this is the space where we see throwing up the doors and having a market in there, having a bike repair workshop, all different things can happen in there. And so that's being maintained pretty much as is.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Orient us, which way is the
Here's the cow,
SRT and which way is the CVT?
here's the cow here.
Okay,
CVT is running along here. And the SRT is running down here and the CVT is running along like this and coming around and going like that.
thank you.
So.
Good.
Here's what I would call the restroom complex. It's got 2 exteriorly accessible restrooms right here and 2 interior restrooms. And then the third area is really meant to be flexible office or administrative space. Is there a business that wants to go in there? It's got a small kitchenette. You can throw the windows open, have a bakery come in, serve food through the windows to people coming there on the weekend. But it could be used in any number of different ways. It could be an office or some other use as well. There's a primary lobby, and then there's an area out front here that makes all the entrances to the front of the building fully accessible.
How are you envisioning the outside bathrooms being accessible? Let me clarify that. I'm talking about more along the lines of when they're opened, when they're actually. If you left them open all the time, I can see you can envision issues with that. So just trying to understand what the operation of the outdoor bathrooms would be.
So right now it's envisioned that public property is going to take care of the building.
Okay.
And the restrooms would be open during the day, during normal operating hours, and then they probably would be locked at night, because you're right, they would be used for all different types of nefarious things that we don't want there.
But it will also depend really upon who those activation partnerships, who those are with. And perhaps there is a tenant in that annex space, you know, ideally a cafe that could have then full oversight. And perhaps that task goes to them.
Right.
So.
But in some way, controlled access. Not when it's open, but at some point it'll be locked up.
How about Saturdays and Sundays? Is property going? Saturdays and Sundays, will property maintain it during that time period?
Well, it's the best answer to that is to be determined. What we do know is that they're not going to be open all day long, the restrooms. They'll be open when people will use them, and they'll be closed. And like Ellen said, whether that's one of the clients that or tenants that we have there that locks that up at the end of the day, or whether it's our public property department, we haven't figured that out yet, but it'll be one or the other.
And there'll be a mechanism to lock it and unlock it like automatically and remotely too.
Right. So you don't need to be on site to do that.
Your Saturdays and Sundays are probably the biggest users.
Correct. Yeah. I will say too, those exterior restrooms were designed as maximum public use facilities. They're stainless steel. They're built in a way where they can literally be hosed out with a drain. So we took all that into consideration. On the exterior, it's a relatively simple design for the site. We wanted this site to be a place where people can go even when the building's not being used. Whether you call that a park or not is up to you. But we enhanced the landscape. We rearranged some of the circulation out front. We moved the entrance, which is currently right here, over to here, so it's away from that intersection. We also created a landscaping buffer along the street. It's very noisy there. Not that that will stop the noise, but at least visually it will help. We have bike racks. Bike chargers have been built in there. We have an area here where food trucks can go. That was another desired use that the community had, where food trucks could come for an event set up. There's water, electricity, all the things that a food truck would need to park right here. In the back of the building, we're going to be putting a set of steps that bring you off the trail directly down, because right now the only way to get down is to jump over those walls or to come down the trail and come in. So there'll be a new set of steps here. There'll be an accessible ramp that can bring you down right here, down to the food truck area, to the back of the building. The retaining walls are going to remain. We're adding some landscaping. There's a small seating area out here along the trail. And I think that's pretty much all of the major improvements on the outside, but it's going to look radically different when it's finished, and it'll look clean and new.
Bill, is the roof of that building strong enough to take solar panels if we would think about doing that?
We did think about doing that. I think that was more of a cost element, Dulcie, but we never did like a full analysis of whether it could support solar
Somebody
panels.
could get in there and have solar panels, so the electricity
Yeah.
was covered, you know, and the lights were covered for the outside and inside.
Yeah.
It might be an investment that it may.
Jonathan.
Bill, is there parking nearby? I mean, if I wanted to drive my bike there.
Yeah.
And then bike from there, come back, do whatever and go.
Yeah, so parking is obviously like a major constraint here, and we've known that from day one. There's no on-site parking. But immediately across the Cal to the west is the SEPTA parking garage. And SEPTA does not charge to park there. So anyone, and SEPTA has been open to that garage being used for Trail Junction Center purposes. We've already spoken with them. So people can park over there. And the good thing about that is that you can literally walk out of that garage and go right up to the Schuylkill River Trail and get on it. And then you can ride east and access the building very easily where you don't have to go on any streets or cross any roads.
Yeah, this is literally like a tenth of a mile from the garage.
Yeah. And that garage is very infrequently used. Yeah, I've never seen it full. So the way Ellen and I want to do this is that because we're talking about 3 projects, I'm happy to answer any more questions about this one. We thought we would ask for questions after each one. So if you have any others about the Trail Junction Center, I'm happy to field those now. If not, I can throw it back to Ellen to go over the Lafayette Street project.
Who's managing the construction project? Is that planning or?
So this is a little bit unique in that normally when we do a trail project, construction project, we manage it here. Because this is a building and this is a little bit out of our area of expertise, assets and infrastructure is actually managing the construction of this project. So they bid it and they're going to manage the construction process because they deal, as you know, like right across the street, they manage a lot of building projects. With our input, I mean, they've been very good about keeping us in the loop because obviously we have a lot of knowledge and passion about this project, so it's a good partnership.
Has a firm been selected yet or no?
Yeah, we selected PJ Dick as the primary contractor. Because of state bidding laws, we had to have the primary contractor can't have subcontractors, so we had to hire 4 primes: the general contractor, electrical contractor, mechanical contractor, and plumbing contractor. So we have 4 primes. I can't remember the names of all this like non-general contractors, but we do have 4 primes. Bidding this and getting bids was a challenge, but we got there. Yeah.
Talk about the budget, 5.6. Wondering what that's being spent on. I mean, initially it just, I think Bob and I agree, it seems like a lot of money, but I don't know the full scope, so.
So I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's,
Roughly.
yeah, I mean, roughly, I think probably it's maybe 60-40 building to site, I think, for budget. It's pretty close to being even, like half going for the building, toward the building and half going for the landscape. The building, even though it's a simple design, is pretty involved because it really doesn't have any existing infrastructure in it that is usable. So that all has to be redone. All the doors are being replaced. We're adding heating and cooling. We're adding lighting. All the windows are being replaced. That office space, we're putting a stairway in that goes down to the basement. That basement's being built out as a storage area. The restrooms are being installed, all the plumbing involved with that, which is not simple. On the exterior of the building, there are a lot of cracks and other things that need to be addressed on the exterior to make it tight. So that's all being done as well. And then, of course, all the mechanicals that go into making the building function. On the exterior, it might not seem like it's a complex project, but you know, we're pulling up all the pavers, they're being reused. All that needs to be put back in, putting in stairways, putting in this ramp system, all of the infrastructure out here electrically. We're putting in water lines, electrical lines, comm lines. We're putting in gas to the building, which is another thing that currently doesn't exist there. Obviously the planting areas as well. I think what else?
Is there any structural issues with the building other than the stuff you talked about on the exterior facades?
No, they did a structural analysis and it's good.
Is it historically designated anyway?
No.
It's outside of the historic district, but we've had a focus on trying to maintain that integrity and respect it. So, and the firm's really knowledgeable, Seiler Drury and restoration work.
Bill, how many generals bid on this project? Now we're talking with 5.6 for the low bidder, what was the second one?
I think we might have had 3 primes bid on this. I'll be honest with you, the first round that we bid it, that homeless encampment was there. And I think that intimidated some prospective bidders because they didn't know what that would look like once they got into the project. We made a real effort to work with Health and Human Services and Assets and Infrastructure to address that issue, but also to reassure prospective bidders that the county was going to handle that and that they wouldn't have to, because they were asking us like, what are we going to do with, if these people. So we worked very hard to, after we didn't get the bids that we needed on the first round of advertising, we worked really hard to get the word out that this issue would be addressed and that they wouldn't have to worry about it. And then when we went into the second round of bidding, we got a more robust response. I can't remember what all the other bids were. They weren't radically higher. I mean, they didn't come in at twice the amount. They might have been slightly higher, but it wasn't a wild range, I would say.
Something you can get to us for the next meeting?
Sure, we could share that before the next meeting. Yeah.
Bill, I see that there's a couple of rain gardens there. Is that the only stormwater management? There's 2 rain gardens?
No, there are other drains. Mhm. Yeah, there's some pipes below that are going to carry the water, and they're adding pipes as well.
But that was something that had been dealt with the prior work, the stormwater management. And so we worked with the municipality to figure out that approach.
Yeah. And that's another good point to when we talk about cost, that having to put in that infrastructure was not cheap.
Any other questions for Bill on the Trail Center? Anybody online?
We do have people online who might want to make a comment. I know Ken does. Ken, if you want to unmute yourself, is that okay? Or you want to wait till the end?
Yeah, I just want to open it up to board members as we go through each one. At the end of their total presentation, then we'll ask for public comment.
Yeah.
Does Sandra or Nicole have anything on the Trail Center?
And no comment.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get public comment on everything.
This, guys, is like birthing an elephant.
What's that?
This is like birthing an elephant. You've been pregnant with this project for how many years? I mean.
Well, Ellen more than me, but
Bravo.
yeah, it's been a bit of a process. Yeah. Anyway, so Ellen's going to now talk about the Lafayette Street Trail Gateway project, which is immediately to the east of that.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Ken Christovich here.
Yeah, Ken, we're gonna take public comment after the total presentation.
Oh, okay. I wanted to speak specifically to this trailhead project.
You'll have an opportunity to do that.
Okay, very good. Thank
We
you.
get through the 3 projects that are related to the trails all at one time, and then we'll get a public comment at that time after we're done.
Okay, and questions at the same time.
Well,
Actually, questions at the same time.
yeah, I mean, we'll take public comment. We can't guarantee that we'll have answers for you. So we'll note your questions, but we'll take public comment.
Okay, so we'll jump right into the Lafayette Street Trail Gateway project and try to move through this pretty quickly. Gonna provide just a project overview, and I'll let you know that the work, what we've accomplished to date essentially on this project. So a bit of context here, you can see the Schuylkill River Trail here in purple and the Chester Valley Trail And then the project site that we're gonna be talking about right now is noted here in pink. It is approximately a half-mile long. It runs between DeKalb Street and Ford Street. It's the linear space along the side of the SRT in that area. It ranges in width, but it's a average of 100 feet wide, and it comprises approximately 4 acres. And the vision that came out of the Access, Diversity, and Awareness study that I showed you earlier was for this space to really function as a linear park and gateway, for it to be more usable, for there to be more activity there. Here we're zooming in, you can see the cow at this end, Ford at that end. The green space in the area with the red dashed line is the project area. Some photos. You have the Trail Junction Center at this end. Main Street is right here. SEPTA tracks here, Lafayette Street here. So it's this long linear space sandwiched in between. And then just to get you down on the ground, this photo is looking west towards the SEPTA garage there. This is Lafayette Street here, and the SEPTA tracks over here. And then another shot looking to the east, one of the large tower bases here for the Pico lines. And looking down east along Lafayette and the SRT over here. So I should explain, it's county-owned property. Pico has an easement, and their easement, there's 2 aspects to it. Around each of these towers, there's a 25-foot square where that is off limits to us around each of those bases. And then there's an aerial easement that starts at 10 feet above grade and goes up. So we are limited to whatever we want to do within 10 feet. We're hoping to work with Pico to get some flexibility on that. At one point it was 25 feet. You might be able to get some small trees in there. Right now we're limited to 10. So fairly restrictive in terms of height, but otherwise we can do whatever we want in relation to the trail.
And Pico breeds flexibility.
What's that?
Pico breeds flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah, and the project goals are to really increase awareness and visibility of the trails, to invite and welcome residents onto the trails, to improve safety for trail users. It's an old railroad corridor, the Pennsylvania and Reading railroads along here, a lot of history. Smack dab in the middle of the site, there's an old crane, you may have seen that, driving or riding along there. So a lot of fun history here. So let's jump in. So we received a regional trails program grant for $80,000 to hire a consultant to develop this master plan. SALT Design Group was chosen right here. They started in August and jumped right in with community engagement. I said, are you guys willing to start? I think it was next week. They had like 1 week to get ready for this Norristown National Night Out. It's just a perfect event to get folks' attention and engagement. So we jumped in, got some early ideas. What were people looking for here? Shade came up a lot. Safety, crossing the street, exercise equipment, seating, arts, things like that. And we'll keep going. So after that, SALT jumped into conducting quite a bit of analysis. So here you can see the hydrology. The 100-year was darker blue, 100-year flood zone. Looking, water's a big deal. You have stormwater basins that were developed as part of the Lafayette Street extension. Looking at topography, it may look fairly flat, but there's some steep areas out there. Sun, huge deal. It's just, there is no shade to speak of there. It is very hot. So that will be an important aspect that we look at, is how to make it more comfortable for humans in the summertime. Extremely scorching hot. Smells, something to take into consideration. The stormwater treatment plant is right there. Now the wind.
Sewer treatment plant.
Sewer treatment, yeah, sorry, I know I was saying that wrong. The winds mostly come from the west, you can see here, so that works in our favor a bit. But depending on kind of the temperatures and conditions, you can smell it, and sometimes you don't. Noise, there is some noise when the trains are passing by and with the traffic. Site access and circulation, these pink triangles here denote places where you can access a site. And interestingly, in the survey that we've had out, that's come up as the most important thing for people, is safely getting to the site. Not even what's going to happen on the site, but safely getting to the site, at least right now, is the number one thing that has been selected on the survey. So that will be a part of the project, and we'll work with Norristown to take a look at those crossings, how to make those safer. The easement that I talked about, these red squares are the 25-foot square on the ground, and then over that salmon area is the aerial easement. There's a little parts that are outside of it, but not a lot. And then looking at the regulatory, the zoning, we're in the downtown riverfront district. This project fits perfectly with that, parks and outdoor recreation. And I won't go through this, but just to show you, we're really taking a close look at the history, a lot of fascinating history, a lot of industrial transportation history. This has always been a place of crossroads, from the Native Americans to the colonials on wagon roads, to then the canals along the river, to the railroads, now to the trails. So it's always been a place of movement and exchange. So then a little further along in the process, in late October, we held what you're seeing here is an open house lunch at the Holy Savior Club, which is right across the street from Lafayette. You might have seen the bocce courts on the back. So we had a lunch there, and we invited representatives from the business community, schools, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, and arts groups, and got some really good input and exchange there. These are showing focused interviews that we did both internally with our Park Trails historic sites, our health promotion folks, and even our colleagues here at MCPC. And then, of course, also with the municipality, both with their staff, a focused interview, and then we also made a presentation to their council to get early feedback. So we have completed phase one, the site discovery and visioning, that's all complete, and we're moving into phase two now. And the consultants are working on design alternatives, what might actually happen here, and working towards developing the master plan. So here's some photos that they have put together, just showing examples of art, signage, shade, history. And then one aspect that has been really important and talked about is slowing down. Usually we talk about slowing vehicular traffic down, but in this setting, we're focusing on how to slow bicycle traffic down. It's become a little bit of a bicycle highway, and which makes some people not feel welcome. And I can attest that many times I've had bikers yell at me, "Get off the trail." So there's a real conflict here. And so we'd like to address that, at least for this stretch in this project. whether you separate pedestrian, whether you have a meandering pedestrian that's separate from the bicycles and you leave that where it is, or maybe you put them side by side, maybe you introduce some more curves to slow the bicycles down, where that's one thing we're looking at. The consultants came and shared these wonderful diagrams showing all these different kind of configurations, whether it's just as simple as this side by side, whether you create a separate meandering path and experience. So I think this will be a great thing that we can do to improve it. The project benefits we know are better physical, mental health, social health, active transportation, economic health, tying back to the return on investment study, free recreation benefit, drawing users into Norristown and nearby Main Street. Next steps will be a design charrette at Salt Studio on Monday. So several folks from MCPC will go. We'll have a working session together. In January, we'll do more community engagement, showing a couple alternatives to folks, getting feedback, hoping to pair that with perhaps MLK Day of Service, moving around town to some different events and getting feedback. And one thing that's come up is maybe a new name. Lafayette Street Trail Gateway is a bit of a mouthful. It's something fun, recognizable, something that you know where you're talking about, and it's just one word, 2 words. So we're looking for ideas if you have any. The master plan should be complete in the spring, around April. So I'll stop there.
My only comment about that, you talked about slowing light traffic down in that section. I would, from experience of riding the SRT many times, it's one of the few locations where a biker can get some momentum because it is a consistent downhill towards till you get to that roundabout that comes up through the other sewer treatment plant. You can actually pass 3 sewer treatment plants along the way. And in the summer, you could, anyhow, but the point I'm making is having it separated with pedestrians or having a separate pedestrian pathway would be great, but slowing down the bike traffic, it's just one of those few locations. Coming down through Valley Forge is another location, but this is one of those few locations where you can actually pick up some momentum coming off. And I would think that slowing that down, especially with the length of how many miles most people ride on the SRT, it's nice to have that break of not being on a flat ground.
We've heard that definitely. But we're trying to address it, because having a bicycle highway runs counter to what we're trying to do with the trail junction center and the activity here and inviting other uses. So there's a conflict. Maybe we can accommodate it remaining a highway.
But you got to recognize that the SRT is a bike highway. I mean, it is used for long distance riding, and I mean, and also for commuting to some extent.
Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, it is used as a bike, as a mode of transportation and long distance riding. So I think that has to be recognized. It's just the one section. You want to be careful about changing the fabric of that trail.
Well, as with any trail, there's always conflicts between users. And so we're trying to address that. And actually the next project, you're reminding me, the House Trail, at one of our community engagements, a guy on a bike stopped by and I said, oh, here's what we're doing here. We're looking at trailheads. And I said, love to get your input. He said, just tell these people to get off the trail. I said, well, that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to welcome people on the trail. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So anyways, any other questions?
For Ellen on Lafayette?
I was gonna make one more point that I just want to be clear. This one is not the same space as the Trail Junction Center in terms of like, there's no funding commitment or whatnot. Like this is kind of a proactive,
Yeah.
looking what we can do and then see how we're gonna pursue that.
Nicole, Sandra, anything? Okay.
No.
Move on to the next.
So Ellen, so now I'll move on to the third and final project that we're going to talk about today, which we've alluded to, the Hawes Avenue and Chain Street Trailhead Improvement Projects. These are also located in Norristown, and as Ellen mentioned earlier, these evolved out of the Trail Access Diversity and Awareness Study as places where providing safer, more accessible, more inviting opportunities for people in the community to get on the Schuylkill River Trail would be explored. And also, how do we draw people off the trail into Norristown? Because again, kind of like the Trail Junction Center, it works both ways, and we want it to work both ways. And to orient you, here are the two locations. Here's Hawes Avenue and Chain Street. Here's Barkley Street right here, the river. SRT running across right here. So these two locations are really right in the middle of very residential areas within Norristown. So they were great opportunities to explore how can we help the community get more comfortable with using these spaces and getting on the Schuylkill River Trail. Let me also mention at this point that in late 2023, we hired NB5, which is an engineering and design firm, to do the construction documents for both of these trailhead locations. And they've been great to work with. If you're familiar with NB5, they do really high quality work, and they've been great to work with. So these are some photographs of the Hawes Avenue existing conditions. Here's Washington Street. The Schuylkill River Trail's right up here in the distance. And here's there's an existing asphalt path that leads you out to the Schuylkill River Trail. Here's a shot looking a little bit further down that asphalt path. Here's where it connects with the Schuylkill River Trail. There's an existing kiosk there. Is it accessible to the community right now? Yes, it is. Is it inviting? No. Is it welcoming? No. Do people feel safe using that path to get to the Schuylkill River Trail? No. Are people who are using the trail feeling like that's a safe and inviting location to get off the trail and go into Norristown? No. And all of our public outreach emphasized all the no's that I just said. And so we realize there's an issue here, and that's why we wanted to address it during the design process.
Is this
There's
the
no
area
way-
that was all reconfigured?
Excuse me?
Is this the area that was all reconfigured not too long ago?
No.
Like where the drainage
No.
culvert is?
Are you thinking of Barbados Street with the S curve?
Same area. Can you go back to the existing map, please?
You see
thinking
that
about this?
there,
This was all
yeah,
redone.
yes.
Yeah, I think that's where the apartment building is.
Well, the MCIU is right here. But that was redone like 3 years ago.
I don't remember I think where I am. Okay, fine.
Okay, if you think of it,
Yeah, I'll think of it.
let me know.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I see where you're at. Okay, got it.
Okay. All right, so that's Hawes. Chain Street, same situation in terms of it being an inviting, welcoming, safe space. I would say that Chain Street is actually almost worse than Hawes Avenue because there's not even a path that takes people down to the trail. So here's the trail right here. People use this space for parking. Here's the trail right here. People who live up in here park their cars down here. The sidewalk doesn't continue down to the trail. Stormwater is an issue. It's just kind of a horrendous space. But it's also a space that has tremendous potential to be a place where people, if you design it correctly, people will want to come, and where people using the trail can stop, use it as a place of respite, and perhaps go into Norristown from there. So the project goals were basically to improve both of these areas, providing amenities like I talked about, wayfinding, landscaping, and so on, and creating a safe link to the Schuylkill River Trail and more broadly the Circuit Trail network at large, as well as in the case of Hawes Avenue down to Riverfront Park, which is right down the street. And we wanted to create welcoming, inviting, barrier-free access to the SRT for everybody. And we want as I said, people using the trail to feel comfortable leaving the trail and going into Norristown for any number of reasons. So we had a lot of public outreach for this project. Ellen really organized that with NV5. We also had a CLAMO, which most of you are probably familiar with, which is a nonprofit community that really serves the Hispanic and Latino community in Norristown. They did door-to-door outreach and got some really amazing input as to why people don't use these spaces or what they would want to see to make them use these spaces. We had community design events. They, like the Trail Junction Center, they were attended by multi-generations of people, young kids to older people to middle-aged people. It was a pretty robust effort, and I would say that the input that we received was also robust. It really helped designers and us figure out what we needed to do here to make these spaces better. And these are just a few of the pictures of some of those outreach events. So you can see people of all ages. It was right on site, so people got to go there and actually see it. And some of the input that we received, I'm not going to go into the details of these, but if you look at them, you're going to see two primary things. Safety and cleanliness were the two biggest issues that people identified for both of these spaces. And people don't want to use spaces that aren't clean, and people aren't going to use spaces that are unsafe. So we knew that that needed to be our directive from the get-go. And then in terms of some of the things that people would want to see here, this pie chart shows that it's very evenly distributed, and you can see some of the activities that people identified. Children's activities, lighting, there's not a lot of lighting out there. People want green areas and green space. They want bilingual wayfinding signage, seating, and public art as well. And in terms of public art, more specifically, we asked them, would you like to have professionally generated art in this area, public art in this area? And what came out is that people really wanted to see community art, art that was generated by the people who live in these areas, so that it is more reflective of the people who live there, as opposed to an outsider coming in and saying, hey, this is what I think should be there from a public art standpoint. So the designs that have evolved from all of that analysis and public engagement, I'm going to show you two slides that show both areas. This is Haw Street, just to orient you. Here's the Schuylkill River Trail. Here's Washington Street. This is where that existing asphalt path comes down to the Schuylkill River Trail. And so we've improved access off of the intersection up here, providing crosswalks and ADA accessible curb ramps to make this a safer place to navigate on foot or by bike and to access the trailhead area. We provided a mountable curve. We coordinated with Norristown public safety officials to make sure that they could use this for public safety purposes. It's wide enough to accommodate emergency vehicles, and they can get onto it by using the accessible curve of the Washington Street. We're providing pavement art down here at the intersection with the trail. This is all art that was generated by, as you can see, primarily kids, which is really nice, and that will be done in thermoplastic that will be applied to the trail. We're providing shade trees along the way. We're going to have a protective fence that runs along this existing retaining wall over here. And let's see, we're also going to be providing a couple of benches. Norristown balked a little bit at providing a lot of benches because they were afraid that they would attract people who would just hang out there on the benches in a not positive way. And so we compromised and said, we'll put a bench or two in and see how it goes. And if they are being used in a way that everybody is content with, then possibly we could add more in the future. So that's what's going on at Haws. It'll be green, it will be inviting, it will be welcoming, it'll be attractive for the community, and we hope that will serve to bring people onto the trail and to pull people off of the trail.
The bridge abutments is also a location for the bridge partitions that go on the trail are also a location for some artwork too.
Are you saying right here?
Yeah, that's where you have the split. The trail is split with the abutment in the center.
Yeah.
That's also an opportunity for dressing those up.
Okay, that's a good point. This is an old rail bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any lighting, Bill? I mean, is that a consideration or?
Yeah, there's some existing lighting out here. There's a light fixture up here. and there's a light fixture down here, but we're not providing any lighting down here. The trails are technically closed at dusk, so there's this tension between if you put lighting in, is that going to invite people onto the trail to use it when they're technically not supposed to use it? So it's an issue, I would say, more broadly, you know, just this project. Okay, so at Chain Street, again, to orient you, here is the Schuylkill River Trail. Here's Chain Street that comes down. That area that we were looking at with the cars is right here. That's about right here, kind of right up against the trail. This is a shot looking up Chain Street like this. So the photograph was taken kind of like right here. So what's happening down here is a number of things. Right now, there's a fence that basically runs right along the trail. So it's not very inviting, and it's.
Who owns that property? What is the ownership?
Great question. Pico owns it. And the county has an easement with Pico that basically covers a 15-foot swath that accommodates the trail, but no more.
And where the cars were parked?
Yeah, the Pico property, I'll show you a map in a second. Well, actually, let me just show you now. Pico owns all of this area in orange, as well as all the way up to here. Pico owns all of this.
And the dark orange? Is that
The dark orange is owned by Norristown. It's public right of way on Shade Street. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So let me important, that's okay, important questions, but let me just run through the design and then we can talk about the site control. So what we're doing here is we're going to extend the sidewalk down Shane Street, down to the trail. There'll be a small retaining wall right here to deal with grade. We're going to address stormwater. We're adding some bollards along here that are collapsible so that again, emergency access is able and Pico can access the trail. But it's defining an area where people can go and congregate, sit, rest, etc. There'll be pavement art here as well in the area, this sort of communal space as well as on the trail. We're doing asphalt paving and regrading at the roadway right down in here. And let's see, we're adding a few trees and a retaining wall up in this area here because we don't have a picture. Well, you sort of do, like right here. It's pretty awful there. So we felt that a wall with some trees would make the space more inviting. And like I said before, for Hawes, we're adding a couple of benches, maybe just one, and we're going to see how that goes and then add more in the future. But we also have some boulders here where people could plunk down if they wanted to rest for a minute on the trail. Ellen just showed you some slides that for the Lafayette Street Gateway plan that were inspirational in nature. Same thing here. These aren't specific to the project, but they're just some of the things that MB5 helped put together so that we can start generating some ideas about design, you know, art panels, benches, trail art. And this is a look at some of the ways that you can deal with the paving, whether it's asphalt and concrete, and gravel, fencing, and so on. So it needs to be extremely utilitarian, but that doesn't mean it can't be attractive. And then lastly, just a little bit about site control. It's extremely complex because there are a number of entities involved here. There's the county, there's the municipality of Norristown, and there's Pico. And so what we're looking at here, so for example, at Hawes, this green is the existing county easement on the trail. We're in the process of working with Pico to amend our existing trail easement to add this area that you see here in orange. We're going to be working with the municipality. We had a meeting yesterday to put together an agreement so that we have the right to not just build the elements within the trailhead area, but then also to own them and maintain them going forward. And then we're going to need some temporary construction easements from the municipality as well to build the project elements up at the intersection, namely the crosswalks, the ADA accessibility, like the curb ramps and things like that. Same with Chain. This is Norristown right of way. So we're going to need a temporary construction easement from them in order to improve the sidewalk, add a retaining wall, put in a crosswalk. This orange area here is an expansion of our existing Pico, our existing easement with Pico, because we need this space to build this little pathway, to put boulders in, some benches, so on. And so we're working with PICO to amend the easement to add in this orange area as well. And of course, there'll be maintenance agreements to make sure everybody's clear on who needs to maintain what going forward. So I would say we were in a tremendous period of delay over the last several months because PICO was being slow in their responses to us. We finally re-engaged and we're in a really good place right now. And so we're optimistic that we'll be able to move into construction documentation at the beginning of next year while we're going through all these legal agreements that we need to put together to address all the maintenance and construction issues.
I just wanted to add, just so you can understand, Dulcie, you were asking about that whole kind of ad hoc parking lot. It essentially acts like public right of way in a parking lot right now. That will move along on a separate track between the municipality and PICO. This issue has kind of been brought to their attention, to PICO's attention, that this is how their property is functioning.
Misused or whatever.
Yeah, and so their desire, they don't want the property, PICO. So their desire would be for Norristown to take that on as public right of way, so they could construct a proper roadway or parking or whatever, you know. So the desire is that Norristown gets that property, but that thankfully is a separate track.
That's all I have. Happy to answer any questions from you or whomever.
Any comments or questions from board members?
I have a comment with the field art.
No comment.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. When they were doing the courthouse there, I noticed a lot of pictures drawn by neighborhood kids and younger, even older kids. It brought us, and I don't smile that often, but it brought a real smile to my face because the neighborhood and the schools were engaged in it. A lot of the art was really good. It was up there.
Yeah.
So I would encourage it to, anytime we can do that, we want to try to get people to be involved.
Okay, yeah, and Bob, that's what we did try to do that. I mean, a lot of that art was.
We worked with Expressive Path as a local nonprofit, and they did a whole focus with the bee as a symbol in Norristown here. They focused, and so a lot of what you saw in those drawings came from kids in that summer program. So we're hoping to use that actual art.
So the artwork that is at the Justice Center is through an organization, a nonprofit called Fresh Artists. And that same group will be installing the artwork inside the new Justice Center. And if you ever have an opportunity to take a tour of the 8th floor now, that artwork from Fresh Artist students, you'll find on the walls, and they between 800.
For the local kids
They're elementary, middle, and high school students
from the area.
from Norristown and Hartman.
Wait, you take a tour of the 8th floor?
Well, once you schedule a meeting.
Any other comments from board members in the room?
Our bicyclists gonna whiz by the Trail Junction Center. Now I'm worried about Steve, you know, on the highway and the bike, just whizzing by the Trail Junction Center. And, you know, and there be people there gathering, slowing down, taking a look, sitting down, and they've got Steve and his cohorts get off the trail.
With his electric.
Well, so along that stretch of path, we do envision putting down also thermoplastic that a series of railroad tracks. It was so long ago we were working on this, I'm trying to remember, but
Yeah,
so we have like railroad tracks, and then we have where the Chester Valley Trail and the Schuylkill River Trail meet, we have some artwork envisioned for there
And the
to
Trail
help.
Junction- and the Trail Junction Center is kind of a pinch point on that portion of the Schuylkill Road track, which you come off of Norristown where the train station is and where the parking garage is, and then it kind of terminates, you go over the bridge there and then it terminates at the Trail Junction. And once you get past the Trail Junction is when it actually
Then you
starts to
go.
open up in the Lafayette Street area. So it's still a pinch point right there. It's not,
Okay.
Yeah.
We have signage in addition, that thermoplastic that Alan's talking about is actually gonna go all the way along here like a railroad track. We have some right at the intersection of the two trails. I mean, honestly, there's gonna need to be a shift in behavior and recognition that this space is gonna be used. And so that's gonna need to be a little bit of like see and adjust accordingly. Because it is gonna be part of the.
Like bumps, is it like a?
So you like, when you see markings on pavement, it can be two things. It can either just be painted, or you can use thermoplastic, which is actually laid down and then melted onto the street.
Use the thermoplastic because you'll be painting it every time.
I know, yeah, it's true.
Wow.
The extra cost is well worth it in the longevity.
Any other comments from board members?
You guys had mentioned
No,
first two phases, some grant funding. Was there grant funding available for the last phase, the Chaining Street and the whole diagonal?
Yes, we received $100,000 also Regional Trails Program grant for that project.
And we have a $500,000 local share account grant application pending right now that we should hear about the next month or two. Good for construction.
Any other comments from board members before we move on to the public?
no comment.
Public comment? Dan, you want to jump in here? Go on.
He's still on.
Am I here?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, thanks very much. Very thoughtful presentation. Thanks for that. People often ask me what this planning function is, and I said, well, I always think back to the train set that I had in the basement on 2 8x4 sheets of plywood, and we got to play with that all the time. And what didn't work, we just redid, and what did work, then we kept. And it's a lot of moving parts in the presentation today. So, on the trail center, in the last discussion that you just entertained, I wondered why we couldn't have deceleration and acceleration ramps with signage that would relieve that problem about the through traffic and Steve on his speedster Schwinn there. Just a thought. Specific to the concept, I'm wondering if there's any similar trailhead centers that are in existence, and how they would compare to this concept. And in that light, I know this is going to be expensive. I think I saw numbers said like $4.3 million just for the rail warehouse. And then I see a lot of other things, and the grants seem really small. So this is general funding from a county that is raising taxes to further burden folks that live across the county. So what's the expectation for return on investment in real dollars here? I mean, you're talking about finding a vendor that's going to work a concession type operation for refreshments and bathrooms open and closed and so forth. So the only revenue stream I see here is what they're going to pay in rent. So how does this? My question would be, how does this all get paid off to the taxpayers who contributed to the development, but might not be able to ride a bike anymore, or that's not their cup of tea, or they prefer to use a trail in the western part of the county or whatever.
Any other comments?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Any other comments?
In terms of the mixed use here, this is kind of like, it reminds me of Butter Valley. If Butter Valley said, well, in addition to an active runway and a golf course, we want to have a water park and skiing, seasonal skiing and so forth, and we're going to do all this in the same space at the same time, and pretend that weather doesn't affect us, and that everybody's everybody's going to get along in using the same space for different reasons. And I have concerns around that is overusing a single space that was always intended to be a bike path. So thanks for your time. Interesting presentations.
Any other public comment? Anything, Karina?
Nothing.
Okay, Ellen, Bill, appreciate the presentation. I look forward to seeing, especially the trail junction getting built and in place. So, but and I did want to say one thing. I think the idea of me speeding on this SRT is highly exaggerated. It's not called speeding. So,
Is it over 15 miles an hour?
okay.
Is it over 15 miles an hour?
No. If I'm going uphill from the sewer treatment plant and into the wind, no. If I'm going downhill, I'm probably going about 40. With the whole thing with gravity and mass and that whole stuff. So there's no brakes that would stop me from going 40.
Okay.
So, but thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is a data center discussion. And I got Scott, John, and Mike. That's it.
Three musketeers.
Yeah, that's three of the egos.
And I'll plan to introduce her later, but we also have Davey, our Chief Sustainability Officer. I'll explain, there's a cross-county team, wide team working on these issues.
So we'll try to separate her from the.
Yeah, it elevates our prestige for certainly.
Being part of that group.
It's a great group. I don't mind it.
Good answer.
There's a laser light on there, that stick.
Okay, and right now, will I generally be on view to the audience?
View to the audience.
Okay, I might just walk. Thank you. So we have this item. I want to explain up front. If you can go to the top slide, this is a few slides later. All right, do that. Sorry. We want to put this on the agenda, much to my hesitation at the time, but also the feeling we need to propel on this issue. It is one of the faster moving and I think more impactful and important issues to come in some time. And like I said, moving very quickly. So we know there's a lot of questions out there. There's a lot of positions and thoughts being formed and opinions being expressed. And it's coming from all sides, both the industry that need data centers to the residents and concerned citizens that may live around potential future uses. So, and then there's the municipal officials who have to deal with all of that, as we do. So today's purpose is, I just, again, want to preface, we're here to have a kind of a discussion, present some of the things we know, explain to our board some of the issues that we're looking at, and we'll finish with next steps. And there are some more structured efforts in the next couple of months that hopefully will be of help to both our municipalities. And I know we have a few people online joining us, I mean more than usual, who we're aware of this discussion. So we welcome that audience, and hopefully this will be useful to them as well. So we're going to start off with some background knowledge on the system. Some of this gets very technical. Some of you may already know a lot of detail about this. Others may have no clue. Hopefully both sides will learn something or even contribute to the discussion on that side. We're going to be a little careful. We don't have a full-fledged position. We're talking to people, researching, looking at things, seeing what's happening elsewhere, and developing what we need to know and how we can help advise both our county administration as well as, again, the municipal side and residents. It's a balance of interests for sure. You have environmental impacts that are very front and center, and many are very concerning. And the residents, I think, really are looking at that and representing it and asking questions. There's the whole energy issue, which goes beyond data centers, but we all use energy, and that's both in terms of just living, but also economic development, how our businesses, how our industries function. These are all hugely important and impactful. And like anything where there's lots of money and involved, as well as interest, you're going to get different sides of information, and some of that may be accurate, some may not, and that's what makes this even more complicated. And then what really comes down to what I think we're going to focus to once we get through some of that is the zoning aspects. And as a planning commission, this is not 100% comprehensive on all sides of the issue. In the end, that's kind of where we make our mark, where we want to help people be informed, want to make recommendations. So that's, where our energy probably gets channeled more so than if this were, say, a regular public meeting or a development proposal that was already coming through to a municipality. And okay, I said, so we'll have next steps. So I'm going to just jump into a little quick background.
But wait a second. No, I'll try.
What is a data center? That what you see in the middle of the slide here is one example of a model ordinance, the Penn Future, which we'll refer to a few times. You can read it, but a server farm, I think, registers the most with me. So if you've been in any kind of enterprise or business and seen the stacks of humming machines kept somewhere in the room, think of that on a larger scale, and a very large scale in some cases. So where that's happening, you need space. Obviously, it's not as much people or manpower, although there is some. But you just need the space and the activity and the machines for all of the very accelerated uses, starting with AI. But some of this has been around even longer than that, just to function as computers have become part of our lives. Important to note, though, within a site where we're talking about a data center, that may include other things more so than other types of commercial development or industrial development. Accessory uses are a big part of that, and that does come into play with the zoning as well. And this is just a short list. There are many more that wouldn't even fit on one slide, but things like security, power generation. So one of the big topics with this issue is how is it being powered and how much power does it take? And we're going to hear a little more about that. But it's mind blowing when you look at the numbers, and you've probably heard it expressed elsewhere. A large hyperscale data center could be the same amount of energy used by a small city. And we talk, Amazon, Microsoft, these big corporate clients using it, and Google, using these. That's the kind of level we're talking about, and that is a huge shift and a huge impact. Sometimes that power can be generated or is not available on the grid. We have challenges certainly in the developed Northeast. So companies look to how could they generate on site or nearby to either supplement or fulfill their power needs function of data center, and that can bring in all other issues aside from the large building and the server farm. Within utility lines serving that, water facilities, pump stations, water is another issue we're going to get into. So there's all those things that kind of come with utilities and the way to make an operation like this run that can enter into the land development side. Just a few notes on the next three kind of groupings there. Like I said, data centers, many have been around for a long time. So in some ways it feels like this is brand new, but it's more of a scaling up, and that at a super fast pace. So corporate or enterprise, where it's serving a large company like American Express or Vanguard, they might have a data center already or have been getting one recently to up their needs. The co-location or wholesale is more of kind of like the commercial enterprise, renting out server space to companies, multiple companies. That model has been in existence for a while and also is elevating quite a bit with the needs of all levels of companies. But in the end, what we're probably talking about when this comes to a major controversial discussion or what these huge developments, we're talking hyperscale, and that can be in our area we're hearing as big as 2 million square feet, which is a lot. I think there's even bigger since other more open places, parts of the country as well. They don't have to be that big. There are smaller as well. Again, what the needs are and what the investors are trying to put forward. And slide. This is just, I stole this from the ULI. They have a guide online, Urban Land Institute. And it's, they kind of take the development side. I think that they make a positive case for how to effectively do data centers and recognize the need for them. This is how they show, just a concept. And it's very basic. I'll call out here is, the equipment yard. This is where you might have backup generators lined up. If you see these on aerials, you'll just see rows and rows of these, maybe they look more like HVAC systems that we're more familiar with, but they might be, again, they're backup or needed power generation. There could be a substation included on the site as well, and then transmission lines to house it. Security, of course, is always an issue. And then water. In this case, it's showing a stormwater detention pond, which in any big development is could be needed and likely a part. Location is often brought up, and we're seeing a lot of these where they're proposed near water sources, near rivers. Whether that is 100% an absolute must in the future going forward as technology changes, I think that's opens up, places that aren't near a major waterway still might be cited or still might be viewed by prospective data center developers. So I don't think this issue is exclusively toward those who are along, like the Schuylkill River. But even the Perkiomen Creek could have.
For what reason do they need to be near the water?
The water is used to cool. Yeah, and John's going to get into this a little, but in a nutshell, when it started out, it used huge amounts of water to run through and keep cool. What's big now are closed loop systems, and not everyone is sold that is the ultimate answer because there is still a lot of water used, but it's much lower than what if you're just bringing in and pushing out or evaporating all the time. We'll cover that in a minute. So I just want to touch on what we do know, where we are, and I don't want to get too specific. Some of these are, in play, are active, are behind the scenes, are, and have a lot of emotion and discussion attached to them. So I just kind of want to give you just a broad overview without stepping too much into what we you don't need to yet. In Montco, this shows a big view. Virginia, if you've looked into this issue at all, is very well known as where the state and several counties took a very think of like first adopters trying as an economic development tool, trying to get as many data centers as they could. And that's where you're also hearing a lot of controversies. There's a lot of rural area there that where they've put them, but you can see just the map shows how many. Not all of these are hyperscale 2 million square foot facilities. The ones that are in Montco are not. The largest one that I'm aware of is about 200,000 square feet that does exist. It's in Audubon and very near the GlaxoSmithKline campus, or kind of might be considered part of that campus. But that's operated by someone we don't know a lot. We're hoping to get a tour through there very soon. And the company's called Flexential.
That's something running?
Yes, it actually was built in 2009, so it's been around a while. And all the things that you hear about now that are of major concern and rightfully so. Not all of that really has been in evidence in that at that scale and in that development, which does have some residential not too far off, but not immediately next door. But I've heard, and again, I've heard that you don't hear the sounds that you hear, YouTube videos of some of these in Virginia, the noise. We'll talk about that as an impact. But again, some of this is new territory. There's a couple others mentioned. I'm not familiar with them. They might be part of a major business. I know there's one on City Avenue that's a big, the Susquehanna, get the full name of it, but Mark, right. They've got a data center somewhere within their large office, what looks like an office building on City Avenue. So that kind of thing. And as far as zoning goes, Limerick is probably most known for having adopted a data center ordinance this summer, I think is when maybe a little longer ago. Actually probably a year ago. And near the Publicker site is known, there's another site there too, where there has been interest, and we're probably going to hear more about that. We reviewed a development plan. It was not specifically called out for data center use. It was more distribution and logistics. And when we reviewed it, we were looking at the truck traffic and thinking in those terms. And that was in 2023. And I think it was approved, but it hasn't. I think they've only done demo work at this point. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've had to say on that front. But you can see there is interest, and just looking at this map, there's probably people who see that and say, "Oh, what can we? Looks like we could do some stuff there," or while the other clusters might be filling out. All right, I'm going to pass it to John.
Thank you very much. For those of you who do not know me, my name is John Lesher. I'm the Environmental Planning Manager. What I would like to do today is do a little bit of kind of level setting to talk about some of the energy and water consumption issues that we are seeing around data centers. This is, to use a water pun, this is a very deep pool of nuance and knowledge. We're going to swim more in the shallow end. And then this conversation is going to lead us to, more and more conversations and the issues that we are going to have to face. So, what kind of energy are we talking about? And a lot of it is size dependent, as Scott said. We have very small data centers, which their energy consumption is, nothing that you would be concerned about, all the way up to the hyperscale, which is Scott said. I mean, we're talking about literally the energy consumption of small cities. So we have to think about the size that we are seeing and the type of energy.
So in Lansdale, we've had developers approach us because we are an electric provider. They've asked us if we'd be able to provide something like this. So Lansdale Borough uses power about 30 megawatts is what our standard is. And the one data center was looking for 450 megawatts, and which is, there's just no way we could do it. The infrastructure is just not even there. But it's amazing the amount of power that they're looking to generate this.
Yes, I mean, the larger ones are, it's mind blowing the amount of energy that they will use. Then there's other ones that are already in existence that we wouldn't even know they're there. You know what I mean? They're small. So we have to, as we think about this, we have to understand the size and concept. On average, though, even the smaller ones, they're using 10 to 50 times energy per square foot than a regular commercial office building. So no matter what, whether it's small or hyperscale, we are talking about large energy consumption per square foot. They are projecting that is projected to double or even triple by 2030. These are proliferating, potentially accounting for up to 12% of the total US electricity usage, up from 4%. So this is a huge, huge issue based on the amount of energy that's being used nationwide. This is being driven mostly by the use of AI. In 2024, 109 billion was invested in using AI tools. About 75% of organizations in the country use AI. So this is something that they are investing in. Companies are using it. They're predicted to spend 364 billion this year powering AI. And just to think about it in the context of what you do, every time you use ChatGPT or one of the AI tools, it takes 5 times the energy as if you ask Jeeves to show my age. You know what I mean? Like your normal Google search, 5 times that energy to run the computing necessary when you use an AI tool. So just something to think about the next time you want to go and Google something that way. So, energy profile, how we are looking at this, to think about it holistically, across the country, 56% of the electricity used by data centers comes from fossil fuels. And those are the emissions that we are talking about that are coming from those, many being natural gas plants, or we are seeing coal plants, their life being extended so they can continue to power these data centers. Our energy comes from many sources. I grabbed a screenshot from PJM. So we'll get into a little bit about what PJM is. They are a regional grid operator. Think of them as almost in some ways kind of the air traffic controller of energy. They control where the energy goes. PECO is responsible for transmission. They're the ones that will bring it to your house, to your business. PJM is the one that manages the whole grid, not only in Pennsylvania, but you'll see a map of a much larger area in our region. This is in PJM. This is where our energy comes from. Most of it is natural gas. We do have nuclear. So we are one of the ones where our emissions from our source is a little bit lower because we have a large nuclear mix into that. Followed by nuclear and then coal and then others. We are going to talk about backup generation when we talk about these data centers, because they're, if the power goes off, everything shuts down. This is a very energy dependent. So all of these data centers have backup generation. That backup generation is usually, fuel, diesel, something along those lines that are there to ensure that they run.
John, does that mean there's like double the amount of energy available to them? Like, you know what I mean? If the primary source goes out, do they have exactly the same amount in backup capacity?
That is my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the backup generation would not be 100%, but pretty close. And it would be one of those, they could shut down like non-essential functions, but at the end of the day, they have to keep those servers running and they have to keep them cool. So yeah, the backup generation is a huge, huge issue and concern. Not only the primary energy draw, but having that generation and how is that going to be powered? And we'll get into a little bit of the an interesting tidbit around that backup generation in a minute. Thank you for foreshadowing, setting up some tension. Thank you, appreciate it. So we have heard and we've seen that energy costs go up. It's one of the major headlines that we see. And why does that happen? There's some local reasons, and a lot of that refers to the transmission system. In our area, that would be PECO. You would need, if you have bigger need, you need bigger transmission to get to it. You need bigger wires and transformers and all of that infrastructure to make sure that that power can get to this system and run smoothly. This isn't all just about data centers. You've heard me speak before about electrification as we were talking about the transition to renewable energy. That is through electricity. So we want things to be electrified because therefore we can run them with renewable energy sources. So that is also putting a strain on the transmission system, and data centers are a part of now becoming, as they come in, a bigger part of that equation. The cost can be localized. You can say, okay, I need a bigger wire coming into my data center. But at the end of the day, a lot of these would be dispersed across PECO. Because it is such an interconnected system. So you may have a data center in one municipality, but those costs for the upgrades that are necessary to get electrons from point A to into your data center could be spread out throughout the whole PECO region because it is such an interconnected grid and system that needs to be upgraded. And then this is the bigger one, and this is the one that gets a little bit more complicated. They're talking about the regional context for why people are seeing energy costs go up. So this is PJM. This is our territory. Throughout the country, there are 9 other regional grid operators. So what happens is, in PJM at least, our demand has been flat for years. We haven't really seen a spike in the need for electricity. But that's changed recently through electrification and the rise of data centers. So PJM forecasts, and one of the things that they do as a grid operator is they have to look ahead and see how much energy we're going to need. They forecast that we're going to need 40,000 megawatts of new generation coming up within the next 15 years to be able to power the things that we need to power between data centers and electrification. But they also expect to lose
40,000 megawatts of generation by 2030 due to the retirement of existing facilities. So we are seeing a need for 40,000, and at the same time, we're losing 40,000 megawatts because of the systems, the current generation systems are old and are reaching retirement age. New generation is needed, but that takes a long time. It takes years to site, design, finance, all those things. So what we're seeing is we have this big PJM market. We have data centers which need energy with less supply. My wife, who went to Georgetown and got a finance degree, would yell at me, but even I can understand supply and demand. A lot more demand, a lot less supply. Costs are rising, not just in our neighborhood, not just in Pico, but throughout the whole PJM region. And that's what we are seeing. So a lot of this is outside of our control. And there are regulatory agencies that are responsible for it. On a federal level, we have FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They are the ones that have set the policies that are mandating the retirement of energy generation facilities. It's just the natural lifespan of these facilities. They are starting to retire. They have switched to what they call a first ready, first serve approach to help move these projects through, but there is still a moratorium on any new energy generation project until the spring of 2026. Yeah, that is so they can work through their existing queue of projects to review, inspect, permit, license, all of those things. So we're in a backlog of projects, which does not help the whole, we need to get more generation going. On the state level, we have the PUC, the Pennsylvania Utility Commission. There is a draft order out right now, which people can comment on until December 22nd. And what that is, that tariff that is being proposed talks about transparency of costs so that people understand what data centers are paying, making sure that they're not getting a discount on their energy consumption, things of that nature. There's things in there about faster interconnections. There are things in there about ensuring equity throughout the process. Scott mentioned the idea of possibly generating their own power on site. It's called BYOG, bring your own generation. But the problem with BYOG is once you do that, you become a utility yourself. And you have to go through the PUC and FERC requirements as if you were creating your own little power plant to then power your data center. And it is another layer of regulatory hurdles. So what are the environmental impacts? And I'm not gonna, you can read this. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because you can imagine we're talking, when we talk about energy generation, we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions and the emissions that are coming from, especially from natural gas, coal, diesel fuels. And we are looking at a 300% increase in emissions rising from data centers. There is locally, we are talking about air pollution. We talked about the backup generation, which are usually diesel or gas fueled. We heard from Penn Future in our conversation with them that one, just as backup generation, they have to be run almost daily to ensure that they are working. So they get run on a daily basis. And there are some that use the backup generation as their primary source of power when it is financially beneficial. So in the PJM market, you pay, you can pay, rates go up and down depending on the hour. And if it's cheaper to run your diesel generation than it is to pay for energy off the grid, they will run the diesel generation to save money. And that runs, then we run into a whole bunch of air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions from the backup generation, along with some of the other issues around noise that we'll talk about.
Aside from that, you're just talking about 300% increase because of backup generation or just in total?
Just the total energy consumption.
The fact that you were talking about 40,000 megawatts being needed, but at the same time, 40,000 megawatts being insufficient.
That's just in the PJM region.
No,
yeah.
But I'm saying, just keep it into the PJM territory, the amount of energy being needed for what they project for future data centers and what would be decommissioned is an offset. So is it really, is that 300% increase still valid, or is that primarily just for backup generation?
This is, this is nationwide. So, yeah, where we are seeing is we are seeing the hyperscales. A lot of them are out, we are seeing them out west. And that, like the Googles, the Amazons are, those are tremendous energy consumers and therefore greenhouse gas emitters from the source.
I got that. I'm just trying to, I'm assuming that if PJM is seeing that offset of what they need to generate for data centers and what will come offline, that and some, obviously there's going to be a time shift there. That other areas of the country are seeing similar things, because I would imagine some of the same conditions are going to be met, where the things that are being decommissioned are obsolete.
Yeah, I have not, it's interesting, and as we do more research, I'll look into that, but that is an interesting, yes. There should be some reduction based off of sources coming offline as opposed to, what is generated. So, that's it's interesting. I see what you're saying.
True, that offset is there. Are we anticipating that 300% increase to be a realistic number? Is the offset being taken into consideration in these numbers? I will not answer.
I will look into it. That is an interesting question of whether that number is accurate based on that balancing of generation versus.
Don, I noticed on your PJM map that the southeast portion of the states didn't seem to have any data centers there. It's a big Florida, Georgia.
You mean that?
Yeah.
This is a map showing who controls.
Yeah, they do not have a regional grid operator down there.
Okay.
It's all done locally.
And I just meant to stress more so up front, like these major nationwide, even global issues with energy, like we're not gonna have the answers. We're not punting for that, but there are some elements to this that just make, just a basic mind say, how do we do this? Like, this is beyond the pale of what it goes, but that's people smarter than us and systems in place working on that. How it comes out is what we're interested in.
Well, you talk about that, so you brought up the whole idea of the Virginia area, and that's, it's been in the news a lot lately, more so in the last 12 months about the concentration of data centers being built in that area. The utility, they must be solving some of those problems. The utilities must be solving those problems. The water needs must be, those problems must be being solved. So there has to be some information or some.
Yeah, rates are going up. Some of those problems aren't necessarily solved to the extent, and that's what we if some of that comes our way, and I don't think we're looking at that same magnitude by any means, but if this, even just one brings some of those concerns. I think it's so fast moving and young. There's like anything, there's complexity, good and bad.
Right, but I want to separate two things. I want to separate the energy need and then the cost of that energy need. So, and I'm not diminishing the cost, because the cascading effect of the increased need is going to cost not just the data center money, but maybe. So I want to separate that for a second. Is there an issue? Do we have a sense? Is there an issue with the supplying of the energy to these data centers or anticipated data centers in the area? Or is there a need to upgrade the systems, much like the discussions that were happening about EV charging infrastructure? On a greater scale.
I think there's absolutely a need, and I don't think, like, if you talk to Pico, and I went to I don't know, an after work lunch and learn type thing, in the summer. Pico guy was there, he was like, get in line if you're interested in a data center, it's about a 10-year wait, before they can promise, energy. And so obviously that's longer than people are willing to wait. So there's all these things, moving parts. What other options do we have? We're not going to get into, we could spend a whole day, if we start getting into, nuclear or different things like that, which could be on the horizon in 5 years.
But if all of a sudden the Montgomery County, Bucks County, 5-county area in southeastern Pennsylvania turned into the Virginia model. We don't have the energy to produce. We don't have the energy supply.
So that is a constraint and a barrier from the industry side for sure, but it's not one that, that doesn't mean they're gonna walk away and then just, give up. There's, they'll look at what they can do locally.
So that begs the question that I originally asked is how do they solve the problem in Virginia? Forgetting about the cost factor or the putting the cost off to all of the power users. I want to separate that because it's an important aspect. What I'm saying, how do they solve it? And that's a rhetorical question.
The big difference is state and county leadership is much stronger or has more authority than the Commonwealth system. So that's how it happened. Those forces wanted it to happen. How they got the energy and the particulars of exactly what that is, I don't have the details.
Don, is the Virginia area in the PJM area?
Looks like it is on that map. It is, yeah.
So were they the first ones in and they got the excess and now they have it and now nobody else, not available for anybody else? Is that really what maybe happened?
I don't want to say what I don't know, but that seems possible.
Okay. So I have a question. 10 years ago, when I was on the Limerick Generating Community Panel, there was the discussion whether they were going to upgrade Limerick, and there was a schedule to do that. And at the end of that period of time, we were told as a community that was scrapped. It was, I don't remember if it was $4 billion or whatever, that they were not going to do it. Has that been revisited to upgrade that plant to generate more capacity?
I am not aware of that.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Scott, don't you?
Yeah, I can't say exactly to answer that, but I could say
Constellation?
they're Exelon, they are it's Constellation, right? The interest in Montco is centered around that, trying to because that is an energy source that is of the level that could certainly help some of this. I'm not in the rooms for that.
Okay.
Could I comment on
Yeah,
that?
please.
I think a lot of
DoD might control what you're saying, so a lot of the protective elements put into that data, that infrastructure. So kind of like one of the things with the military, homeland security efforts to basically protect that data or bring these data centers in and provide the infrastructure and the services they need to basically facilitate.
In the Virginia area.
Just back to the question about Constellation in Limerick, we met with them actually out in Limerick, and they told us that their upgrades to their plant and as well as the upgrade to the 3 Mile Island, those upgrades are not planned to power up data centers, and they don't have the capacity to do that right now.
Even though in the 3 Mile Island, the generating system is increasing, they're bringing back online another but that's not subcontract. That is specifically for a user that worked with them on that.
Right, that's
Okay.
not, they haven't been in any discussion, to my knowledge, when we spoke with their government relations team and the folks that were the leadership in Limerick, they indicated that they were not in discussions with any data centers to use their power to power up any centers there.
So, and then locally, we do have to be aware that these data centers do contribute to the urban heat island effect. They do run hot. So that is another local concern that's exacerbating some of the things that we are seeing through climate change already. There are opportunities for innovation. I mean, the more renewable energy that we can get into the system, the better, helping with that supply end of it, the generation end of it, through cleaner energy. We are starting to see examples of geothermal cooling of data centers, which do reduce costs. Swarthmore College has a geo exchange plant where they are taking the heat from the data center and using it to heat their buildings. So there are innovative things that can be done to conserve energy as these data centers grow, evolve, and hopefully as we kind of push for that innovation from the consumer end. Very quickly, because I know we have a lot more to cover, water consumption profile. So this is something that we are seeing. The older data centers and the bigger data centers were massive, massive water consumers. We are seeing the newer data centers are using newer technology and are using less water. But it is an issue to be aware of as a community, as consumers, to make sure that we are seeing the best practices as we come in. That water is needed. These servers run hot, so the water can be used for cooling. But when we think about it, we also can think about the larger water footprint from these data centers. Being the tree hugger that I am, thinking about the water that's necessary from the power generation, from the source, all the way through the microchip processing, like construction end, which is very water intensive. So just in general, throughout the whole, cradle to grave, these things are very water consumption heavy. They can populate, they can use 5 million gallons per day. They can use what's, the equivalent of a small town. Though we are seeing innovative data where we are using closed loop systems where they are being, the heated elements are being submersed in synthetic fluids to help keep them cool. We are seeing new data that allows this, new technologies that keep them cooler without as much water consumption. But we do need to be aware of the water impact. If it's in a private system, we need to make sure that there's capacity in that private system for the water needs of these data centers. When it goes into a public system, we need to think about the back end of it. That water then needs to be treated. That takes energy, greenhouse gas emissions, and even that treated water, when pulled back into the natural hydrology, is not, it changes the hydrology of the water coming out of the wastewater treatment plants. If they are drawing from a river, from an aquifer, can that natural system support the water draw that may be necessary if it isn't a closed loop system? And what is that effect going to be on their neighbors? Are they going to make wells run dry? Things of that nature. And overall, no matter what we are talking about, whether it's coming out of a public plant or whether it's drawn from an aquifer and then released, it is going to change the natural hydrology of the bodies of water that come into it. The water is going to be warmer, things of that nature. So we are going to have environmental impacts to our water bodies. And I'm going to hand it over to Mike.
Okay. All right. Here's John. Okay, so I'm Mike Narcowich. I'm Community Planning Assistant Manager. I'm going to talk about some of the other impacts that need to be considered when planning for data centers. The development area is significant. These are large areas. The average size is 100,000 square feet. I know in Newcastle County, there's one being proposed that is 6 million square feet. There's a trend to build higher in cities. We heard about some of these centers in more developed areas. And I know the data center map indicates there's one on North Broad that's in a 12-story building.
Mike, give us some context. The warehouses that are being built for like Amazon or distribution centers, I should say, that are being built. Do you have an idea what those square footages are?
I'm guessing 400, 500,000 square feet.
I'd go high. 2 million is not unusual in some of those big, in those companies.
So comparable in some sense.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah, if you hear one proposed here, there's probably a big name that they're not saying, but is behind.
Right, but I'm just talking about the size of the structures that are being built is somewhat compatible.
Yes, one thing I'd note is that the equipment often takes up significant amount of ground area. So that's something that warehouses may not have. So of course, these you have farmland, open space, vegetation, storm water management is a concern. The size of the site does vary greatly. You heard about the data center in Upper Providence that Scott was talking about. And that is one of the smaller, older ones, but then there's some that also need hundreds of acres, the hyperscale data centers. Some of those need something on that order. For noise impacts, the noise itself comes from cooling equipment, ventilation fans, exhaust vents, and other equipment. Backup generators is one of the loudest components. And generally, though, in the course of normal operations, people describe a low frequency hum, a drone, that is constant. And it's interesting because it's something that often does not violate standard noise ordinances in terms of pure decibels that are looked at there. But when you monitor the lower frequencies, you can set a more appropriate standard for that. Also with noise, that's a little hard to predict. And that's why many of these ordinances and model ordinances require an acoustic engineering study, because it's hard to predict on a site how far noise is going to travel in any one direction. It's affected by temperature, wind, humidity, surfaces which reflect noise, surfaces which absorb noise, the built environment. And so I was talking earlier about the standard method of regulating noise, and that's often with A-weighted decibels, and that gives higher weights to frequencies that are more audible to the human ear. But again, for these, you might be talking about non-weighted decibels, which give the standard weight to lower frequencies. Some ordinances require monitoring of noise, not only before construction, but after construction and prior to releasing the escrow. Emergency response is a consideration, and so this could involve a data or security breach. Fire suppression, data centers have unique challenges, and so some of the ordinances, some of the models require that the applicant train emergency responders on how to address emergencies at the site, and even require, the ordinances may even require the applicant to pay for that. Some have requirements for reimbursing the local fire department for emergency response incidents, single incidents that cost $25,000 or more. And of course, you have concerns with hazardous materials, batteries, refrigerants, power outages, another concern. In East Whiteland, they have an approved land development for a data center in Malvern, and that includes not a monstrous area, but a sizable area for parking for disaster response, primarily for security or power emergencies. And emergency response plans are often required by zoning for data centers. E-waste is also an issue. Servers are typically used for 3 to 5 years, and then they're disposed of. So some companies have sustainability goals for electronic recycling, and some municipalities have requirements for having recycling systems.
Yeah, so what you've heard so far is probably, if you had heard nothing else prior, you'd be saying, well, why would we want any of this? And there are obviously positives, and looking from an economic development standpoint, at the municipal level, the tax revenue can be considerable. Just as an example, again, we'll point to the one we've referenced already, that in Upper Providence, that site with the 200,000 square foot, prior to being built, was assessed at about $700,000, and it currently is. And once it was built, it's now at $16 million. So the return to the local community, if they are the home to one of these, is obviously the biggest motivation to pursue it. But I will say, well, and then the job side, there are jobs associated with it. I think the point is often made incorrectly that it's a very low number of jobs relative to the size of the operation. That's just the nature of it. But there are some of those are high paying because, in the tech field, And there's also training needs with our local schools, and actually that the county has already prioritized that with the community college and other aspects. But I don't want to discount the fact that yes, there are jobs, and of course the construction jobs are a fleeting part, but that's also goes into the overall economic picture. And I think you have friends on that side that want to see more of these provide for the representatives. And go back to the economic development. It's not just the data center might be a golden goose, but I think the case is often made that data center might be partial or supply uses for adjacent tech companies, whether biomedical or otherwise. And I think if we delve into hypothetical or theoretical possibilities in our county, I think you could see that. Where it is moving forward on a hyper scale, Bucks County is Falls Township is a well-known one. The governor was out earlier this year promoting and helping to enable. That's a big technology campus, not just the this mega data center, but also uses in offices and research R&D that go along with it. So I don't want to ignore, or I definitely want to recognize that there's a large picture there as to the prospects. Not everyone will buy into it. Some people, we've seen promises before in these types of things where energy is needed, whether it's the natural gas explosion and fracking or whatnot, doesn't always pan out to what the promises are. So it's just, and then legally, we're going to start to get into the zoning side of this. It's a use. You can, if the position is we don't want to be anywhere near this or support this at all, you might be subject to challenge. And I think avoiding corridors is important. When this first, even a few months ago, when we realized we need to get more on top of this, the question was, are you better off right now having a permitted use and a full and an ordinance with it, or are you better off not having it and then leaving it open and maybe being able to constrain some of those applicants? I think at this point, being proactive is the definite advice I would give, and especially if you're in an area that is being looked at, and what can be done with the zoning to help protect, and also if you are going to get it, and if that is a goal, how can you do it in the best possible way to avoid some of reduce these negative impacts. Harrisburg's certainly active right now, and there's several bills that have been in play this year. Again, I'm not a legislative expert. I don't want to pretend to know exactly where these things stand, but I just wanted to point them out. And they do if any of them go through, and lots of bills go through Harrisburg on lots of issues, and not all of them result in actual adoption. But these are some of the important ones. 1834 is the most recent, and that one is in the House. It's primarily Democrat sponsors, but a large group of them in the Energy Committee. And this is set out to the purpose is to look at how to
are providing funding to allow funding to increase the infrastructure to allow the building of data centers. So for instance, you have the accelerated data center permit. I've seen that proposal. It's one thing to accelerate the permitting, but if there's no power for it, or if there's not enough power to support it, then
it's a very complicated logjam essentially, and what pieces break through are going to be. I can't even speculate at this point how that's going to play out.
Well, do we know if any initiatives through the state legislature is providing funding to increase the infrastructure?
I don't know how much is. The governor was out in front early. He's been more quiet lately. We're kind of on the outside, see what happens there. The main one I do want to point out was 502, which was on a kind of a fast track of support early on. I think it's getting a little more opposition, called the reset bill. This would have more impact. It would create a board, state level board that would actually be able to make decisions on siting data centers. So essentially it would remove some local control to some degree and possibly a significant degree. Mikado has come out in opposition to this locally for that reason. And again, how these come about, how they ultimately would happen, there's good and bad, some, and some of them, we may be, working for the next, 5 months on zoning issues with these, and then, something happens in Harrisburg and some of that becomes moot because we no longer have the power or control. But that's our system. I'm going to keep going and continue with the zoning. I just want to say up front, we're going to hit on some of the things that we're both seeing, hearing, kind of learning ourselves, gearing up to advise communities with these zoning issues. And I already said, I think the need to zone is important. I think one of the big questions up front should this be treated as a by right, special exception, or conditional use? I feel pretty firm that special exception and conditional use is where this should live right now, given its complexity and some of the unknowns. And also the ability. No? You don't?
The TV special exception.
Well, but you can require, it requires the public hearing. You can set forth what needs to be provided. Like in the Penn Feature Model Ordinance, it requires certain studies to demonstrate, how the noise will be suppressed, where the water's coming from, do they have the energy or not? That my understanding is.
But special exception, even in the MPC, is a by right use. I mean, there's not.
But you have to meet the standards, and if you don't, they.
Oh, yes, you have to meet the standards, but still, that would be the case in any type of by right use. There would be standards in the zoning ordinance to allow for that to occur.
Conditional use is a by right use as well. So
I'm sorry?
Conditional use is a by right use as well.
But I would suggest that a conditional use has more input by the municipality or by the governing body than a special exception. A special exception is going to go within the hearing board. It's not necessarily looking at the overall policy of the municipality.
And the onus is on the township to say why it's not.
Well, or protestants, or anybody. I mean, I would think criteria set out in a zoning ordinance that requires a conditional use, and the criteria for what can be considered as part of that conditional use should happen in that platform than a special exception.
Well, like I said, I think we should have definitely. I'd appreciate having that conversation for sure, because we want to have the best advice we can give. I'm still right now. I'm of the opinion either or. I was thinking special exception. There might be political reasons why the conditional use, like we saw, Plymouth, had a proposal that was public, and that was because they don't have zoning for the use, and the zoning hearing board was going to hear that, and that was going to be a big deal. Then it got tabled, but I think we should have that conversation.
It's a worthwhile conversation. Definitely, special exception may not give the municipalities I don't want to say control, but the ability to affect the outcome that they could get in a conditional use process.
Yeah. Well, what I am seeing with the models that I like, and we don't have our own model, and we'll talk about the end. We're going to go that route, but they're setting forth these studies, requirements. Mike's going to mention a few of them here, the right, and what's going to be the body to say yes, you've done that, or that's satisfactory or not. And that's, to me, that's the grounds for either making it more difficult to dissuade the development if it's not in the right to be there, or in the right place to be there, or cover the basis of what the local constituents want to be sure is addressed. So either of those bodies, I was hoping my office they could accomplish that.
And I don't feel really concerned about that. I think any of these developers or companies that are going to propose data centers know that they're in for a process. Like, it's not like they're building a single family house and they're gonna.
Well, right now
it's gonna be by right and they'll get a building permit. These guys, these companies, these whatever entities that are coming in for these data centers know that they're gonna be in for some process of scrutiny, input.
Lawyered up.
Whether it's lawyered up or not, I'm just talking about, like, they know that they're not walking into something that somebody's gonna rubber stamp and say, we give building permits. This is gonna be a process. So putting a process in place and giving them guidelines and hurdles and conditions that they need to work through, they know they're gonna be doing that.
Well, and again, things are changing month to month here, and I think there was a period, and maybe we're still in it or at the end of it, where there's a race. If you can get it, if one of those big, powerful developers can get somewhere where they don't have, you know, the zonings or protections that are might be obstacles otherwise, why wouldn't they do that? And I think we've seen that. So
the point I'm trying to make is I would be concerned about putting in the scrutiny in the zoning ordinance for them to have to abide by, because
what if then they just sue and
they're expecting it anyhow?
Get it approved, even if the municipality is not comfortable with what the plan is. That would be my concern.
I'm not sure I understand that.
If those things aren't in there or in the code, then what's, you know, even if they decide we see it in other uses, like people want to say no or deny it. Well, on what grounds? And if it's not strong enough, those grounds aren't strong enough, then they might get challenged, sued, and you go to the court order where you have to do it anyway. And don't have the control.
I think you're going to prevent that. I think we're talking about, I think we're on the same page. I think what I'm trying to say is that I believe you're right. There is a race to get some regulations, some zoning land use regulations in play so that the municipalities, the governing bodies do have an ability to affect the process and potentially the outcome and where the outcome is headed. I agree with you there. What I was trying to say is that I don't think we should be shy about creating a model ordinance that puts in the scrutiny in the process and the potential for conditions, because these developers, these entities know that they're gonna have to do that anyhow.
I totally agree. Okay, we're on the same page.
I think we're on the same page. I'm agreeing with you. I just wouldn't be shy about writing in some of that regulation, some of that condition, some of that process, because they're expecting it.
And that's part of the guidance we want to give. And
whereas on the flip side, if you were to do all of that for a single family home, I mean, that's like excessive. Nobody would expect that. They're expecting.
It's interesting. One of those bills I skipped over, I don't know if it has any weight to it yet, but was based specifically to ensure that data center uses weren't subject to more onerous requirements than other industrial uses. And that one kind of worries me, because there's some apples and oranges aspects to this. It's not, I mean, all heavy industrial has its major issues, but I don't think they're all. I worry if that's would be too industry friendly. We're really short on time, so I'm going to probably shorten Mike's contribution. Let me just jump. So we're looking to do, I think, a white paper is the most achievable in the short term, and I'm talking, in the next month or two, to get out to have some of these concepts, have some of these guidance out to our municipalities. We're also talking a possibility of a future event as early as maybe February. Chester County brought it up. Davey's been talking to them. And so it might be a municipal officials focused opportunity to educate and bring people in and have some experts and advice from that arena, both for the concerns and also for the economic development side as well. Davey, did you want to share anything from your? Dave's been talking to EACs and actually been doing a lot on this issue. So I don't know if you wanted to just sum up anything that you share.
Yeah, just in the interest of time, I can keep my points brief. Just to say that in the few months that I've been here, the data center issue has come up for me daily. It's something that I'm talking to EACs and residents about constantly. I've also spoken with other sustainability officers in other states across the country that have more data centers than we do, and other experts that work in this field as well. And the conclusion I've come to is that it's in the county's interest to issue a model ordinance as quickly as is possible. I know that the planning commission has a very thorough process, which I respect, and I think, we shouldn't take any shortcuts, but just to say, my perspective is that the best thing that the county can do is support municipalities by issuing a model ordinance that they can have as a resource. We know that our governor is very pro data center, and in light of that, I think, again, trying to get ahead of this issue and be proactive. John talked about all of the FERC and PUC and things that are out of our control. Having a model ordinance is something that we can control. And this is one way that we can support municipalities. So that's just, my perspective, but I'm here to support the planning commission in whatever way I can in helping to pull a model ordinance together as well.
Yeah, there's some local examples, not a lot, and a couple, like I mentioned Limerick, but a couple outside East Coventry, East Vincent that are of nature. Mike had put together some of the provisions that stood out in those, not necessarily judging what is great and what is not, but that's something we're evaluating. And I think I don't disagree with what Davey suggested. Whether or not it's a full-fledged, here's a model plug and play, although no model is ever just plug and play, or it's just calling out the ones that we think are the best that might already exist in order to again have that a shorter turnaround, because there are issues that we haven't dealt with and that are difficult to put into codification. So if we see someone else has already done it and we like it, then let's essentially copy paste and say this is a good way to go. We recommend it, and I think that achieves the same goal. I hope, but we can talk.
Do you see it as a district ordinance, or do you see it as a use regulation to be applied to districts?
Well, I think you're going to see it differently depending on the municipality and what they really are they really looking to facilitate this? Do they see it as an economic development goal, or do they see it as we want to protect or guard against or don't want it at all? And that may judge with the approach they take over whether it's an overlay, whether it's in the existing heavy industrial. And this is where it gets complicated too. If you are talking about 100,000 square feet and it can be done, you wouldn't otherwise know it's there and it's part of a R&D campus or center. Or we don't want to mess up those needs that aren't as critical or as significant in terms of their impact. So
is conversation coming up in our regional planning groups?
Yeah, and I think Eric hears from them as well. I think that prompted some of our audience today for this discussion. But yeah.
Yeah, they've all talked about it. They're all asking the question of, should we be adopting an ordinance to make sure the region's covered? They are working through it actually a little bit in Pottstown. Douglas has an ordinance, I believe, but also they looked at a model ordinance, a proposed ordinance from East Coventry Township, potentially for data centers that they reviewed just this last Monday night. So yeah, they're all coming up, and they will hopefully use our model ordinance to approach several of the communities in the regions.
All right. Yeah, and this is the last thing that was on. Community benefits agreement is something we don't see as much of, but this is also a very popular recommendation, and I think it is important too, in terms of laying out what is the company that's going to come in and build or run this. What can we ask of them to do to help facilitate, to mediate? There's big money in this, so the municipality should be getting everything it can to help supplement what impacts might occur. So there we are.
We're close to we're at 11:30.
Yep, I already covered our next steps, and I do want to mention I mentioned Penn Future and York County are the models that I've been looking at the most. Penn Future is a shorter, but I do like its succinctness, and they're certainly of the environmental stewardship side of things and protection. So I think it's good to start there. York County has a very complicated technical one, and it involves a lot of everything from tree plantings to things that might already be in a saldo that aren't as critical for a model of just looking at this use, but it is probably has a lot of good things in it.
So that's fine. Other comments from board members in the room? Or other than discuss? Comments from anybody online?
Not that anyone's chatted with me about, but there's a big group.
Anybody online that would like to make a comment on this topic?
No comment.
Public board member, nobody? Okay. Anybody in the room? Staff? Okay.
We may follow, like, so this is kind of ad hoc, we may follow up, with some updates next month.
Wait, you have somebody raise their hand.
We have Marla. We have someone who just raised their hand. Marla.
I apologize. I was called away on another call. I really want to thank you for going over this and highlighting all the key issues. It was extremely helpful. And although it was only an hour, I think you did a really good job of covering, all the key issues. And I look forward to the model ordinance. And I think, for those of us out in my area, probably in other areas as well, I think we're really concerned about the potential impact of legislation from Harrisburg, that even if we have what we think is a good ordinance that protects our local interests, that we could just be completely overcome by Harrisburg. So that's, I think, one of our biggest concerns here. And also a lot of us on wells, issues about water use. But I really want to thank you for doing this.
Anybody else reading? Okay. Scott, can you take us into the work program briefly, and then we'll discuss it more in January?
Yeah, 60 seconds. Yeah, on your table, you have a copy of the draft. Similar procedure from last year if you were part of that. We're going to present this in full or more full in January and hopefully seek your approval. In that time that we look at, we just if there may be some proofing that still needs to be done, although we've tried to do as much as we can, but also the rush to get this out and cover all the work we want to. So it's set up. Those who are new to it, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Our setup is similar as it's been in the past. This might be the last year it's exactly this way, as we have a new comp plan next year, maybe correlated to. But those focus topics are up front, 7 areas where projects are kind of arranged around. And then we have our signature programs, our comprehensive plan, the community planning contract assistance work gets its own chapter in detail, which is useful. And our core functions, which show that every day, so to speak, type things that we do here. And then finally, just to clarify, in the back, the appendix identifies really the same work that's throughout the document, but organizes it by our planning sections within the department. It's more, I think, an interdepartment mechanism or tool resource to see what everyone's doing, but we put it out there as well. All the work kind of reiterates the work outlined. If you do have comments, feel free to send them my way prior to our January meeting. Obviously, we'll have a presentation and opportunity to discuss and take any comments then. But if there's something you see or a question, we can address it sooner than that. We're happy to. So I will. Any questions on this?
So I think as in years past with the work program, it's incumbent upon board members to go through the work program. This is why we changed it up a little bit instead of having it presented to us and then looking to comment, getting an advanced copy in December, and then scheduling a more extensive conversation in January. And the reason I say this is to go through it and be prepared to discuss it with staff is because this will be an opportunity for us to have some input or some discussion about what is going to take place in the year to come and express priorities, concerns about workload, concerns about what being in there at that time, and be able to the board to interact with staff in a direct way about what's going to happen in the following year. So lead with board members to go through it in detail. So.
Okay, sir. I agree with that.
Can I ask one quick question before we go on?
Yeah.
As I was looking at just a new guy and trying to make sure I understand the layout of the document, Scott, the departments listed or enumerated in the appendix match the org chart, with the exception, I think, of urban design doesn't appear to be listed, but design planning does. Is that the same thing?
Yes. Okay. So Our design department is like in the org chart encompasses graphic design as well. So those two are separated in the appendix, so from urban design to graphic.
But is design planning what's called design planning, the appendix, supposed to equate to the larger group called urban design in the org chart?
Yes, so that's a good point, maybe an inconsistency we can resolve.
Actually, those are some of the notes I was thinking about changing and didn't want to discuss until next time, just changing the word chart, to be a little bit more reflect, but thank you for noticing.
No, I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn. That's what everybody is, and you're exactly they are, so. All good, thank you.
And lastly, again, just reiterate, to Steve's point, these, as they have been previously, all these projects are noted in the tables within with timeframes. Short is what we intend to accomplish in the next year in 2026. If it's medium or long, it is expected to take longer. So many of these projects were in the last work program, and some of them that's because they were medium to long term. So we adjust those each year, seeing where we're at, and designated. Okay, yeah, is that good? Yeah, great. All right, and then I'll keep super brief director's report. We thanked Judy Shia, our intern for the last couple of months. This is her last week. She's not here, so we'll go forward with that. Thank her for all her work. We're fully staffed to the positions that we have open. It's always good. Quick shout out to Austin Mosby and Tim Kenichi, who passed their AICP certification test. So they're bona fide. And we're always encourage our staff to get it. We have others studying for next year. I talked about the budget at the last meeting. That will be up for final adoption by the Board of Commissioners at their December 18th board meeting. Nothing to my knowledge has changed since the draft was submitted, that at least that affects us. And then we have a Montco 2050 Advisory Committee meeting this afternoon as virtual. And the other highlight, next week at the Board of Commissioners, they'll be entertaining the first proposals, grant applications for the Montco Forever Green Open Space Program. So we're very excited for that. And the Open Space Board already reviewed those and made recommendations to fund the two projects that came in. So we'll give you a quick update on those once they're approved. And finally, two finals. We're celebrating the 200th farm being preserved on December 15th on Monday. It's in your events list. Contact Dana or Steve if you are interested in joining us for that. It will be at a Christmas tree farm. Coincidentally, that is the 200th farm in this time of year. It's perfect. Couldn't plan that better. And then speaking of the holidays, we have a holiday party this Friday at Von C's. You are all welcome. It's from 2 to 4:30. There will be a meal, forget the name, but Mexican food truck that does very well providing food and entertainment in the form of our white elephant gift exchanges always. So again, hope to see you there. And the events sheet was provided yesterday, so that's all. Great. Thank you for staying.
Yeah. Any other comments from board members and before we adjourn?
Happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah, everybody have a good holiday, good new year. Look forward to seeing everybody in January, if not on Friday. So. We're
it's over by the state hospital, on off Sterigere and
Yeah, it's just up Stanbridge.
So warehouse is a beautiful space though. We had Drew Shaw's retirement party there.
We'll just look it up on the census. I don't know.
So you got your GPS thing right there.
Look it up on the census.
Didn't say odd, 4 times a day.
I don't want to waste the electricity.
There you go.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays.